So I've been in journalism for more than 20 years. Most of my career has been in the television news world. I only recently, in 2017, got into public radio. So I was behind the scenes, a producer, and then later an executive producer. Also did a lot of leadership work on the digital and social media side. And in between all of that, I taught journalism at Florida A&M University and Mizzou. So I really feel like I am a multimedia journalist because I've also done print, and so now radio, and so really has run the gamut of the different platforms in journalism. I think that the primary goal of most news organizations is to provide accuracy and credibility to their audiences. And I think that without some agreed upon style, there is a kind of a messy world where readers and viewers and listeners may not know what to expect on any given day, and perhaps that could erode trust a bit. I think that each news organization that I've worked at spends quite a bit of time thinking about their own style. Individual news organizations often craft their own style guides for regional and local purposes, and base those style guides on nationally recognized standards as well. One thing that's interesting about the AP style and guidance on race is that you'll see a lot of references to having conversations and discussions, because while a lot of things in journalism are a case-by-case basis, stories that are about race are definitely, the majority, I would say, should involve some kind of conversation between the editor and the reporter, because even if you think that you understand your organization's guidance, there's the case that comes up that seems to be an exception or different or unusual. So what I appreciate about the AP's most recent guidance, and if you go to, you can just Google it and find AP guidance on race, is that conversations are really important to have when you're doing this work. The other thing about AP guidance, which most journalism outlets tend to follow, is careful thought about when it's relevant to mention someone's race or not. So, if you are doing a story about, a riot that is based on racial strife, you're going to have conversations about, how are we going to describe people consistently in this story. NPR has some preferred spellings or references that it uses where it refers to the dictionary, and the dictionary of preference, I believe, is Webster. So there's some things there. The NPR style book is very narrowly focused. It's not a huge compendium. It's organized by letter of the alphabet, and it's searchable. So you will come across a few things that are a little bit different. One thing that's really interesting is, and I've thought a lot about Latinx. NPR says, it's acceptable to use Latinx, in terms of when you're trying to refer to someone who is of Hispanic or Latino or Latina descent. And AP prefers to revert to using it when someone prefers that term. You would say something along the lines of Holly Edgell, who prefers to be referred to as African American, or as, because style says we should use Black with a capital B, right? Then I think that would be the workaround there and the respectful and accurate thing to do. And I do think that more news organizations are also including by sort of notes, or especially on the digital side, notes or sidebars explaining why we use certain terms and why we did what we did in a particular story. So I think that is helpful in the area of transparency. Can't always do that in a live broadcast, but certainly I think that common sense also prevails in many ways. And I think if you're talking about radio, that is common sense to people. That again, it goes back to accuracy. It goes back to respecting your audience and respecting your sources. It goes back to consistency, credibility. I think that as an editor, I'm always I've got my sort of internal scanner on for words and ideas that come up and themes that come up in work and how they might hit the person's ear or eye. This is another area that NPR defers to AP. So, but I know there have been conversations also internally and meetings and discussions broadly and then also in a micro sense about calling it what it is. And I think a lot of times in journalism, because many people who are in the middle or later parts of their career today were taught about, this fallacy of objectivity and this sort of fallacy of, there are two sides when really there are often five sides, and that we can't call it what it is because it will sound like it's giving our opinion. Well, I think the first step too is to be a very media literate consumer and as a journalist, to be looking at what different news organizations do and how they do it. And like I said, so many news organizations now are very transparent about this, and they have published guidelines that the public can read, and that includes other journalists. People who are entering the workforce in journalism can be champions for not just great journalism and consistent style, but leading these conversations. I think that when a news department is transparent or a news organization is transparent and upfront about what it's grappling with and shares that with its employees and its audiences, that makes everything that comes out of that news department better.